Cory, no doubt the fiscal conservatives are disappointed about the spending, but the reality of the politics is that, again, we talk a great game about wanting to tighten our belt, but the reality is we've got our hand out. Do you agree with me that that it's the right type of people who get something out of this, and the politics that works is by the fuel excise being cut at midnight, is that people can start to see a change as soon as the next couple of days?
Paul, I take your point, I really do. But for me, as a person who eats white bread and eats meat, I'm sitting there going, thank goodness this reckless spending has stopped. I mean, we're only going to have $300 billion more in debt over the forward estimates. Thank goodness we're spending $686 million on Indigenous land and sea ranges. That's going to save us from China. Thank goodness another $1 billion going to the Barrier Reef and $800 million to Antarctica. I mean, I've got to say, I understand the politics of this, but by crikey, I'm disappointed. I just look at it and go, what sort of a country have we become where we've just, everyone is sitting there waiting to get handouts for some boondoggle? And the points that Andrew Bolton, you just discussed about immigration was an excellent one. Cutting fuel excise. I mean, yeah, okay, it helps people immediately, but it's really not a particularly good policy, to be frank. There's many other ways in which you could achieve a better result, as far as I'm concerned. And it's hypocrisy when you've got a net zero 2050 campaign approach. It just says everything about the state of politics, mate. And I'm sorry, I'm so disillusioned and disappointed with it. This budget might be slightly less bad than the one Albanese would give. It might be a lot less bad, but I think Australia, frankly, deserves better in its management and custodianship of its obligation to future generations. And I think this is where we're letting ourselves down, and it is the debt that I'm focused on.
No, we've got the heat lamps on, nothing but the hot takes. That's the way that we like it. Michael Kroger, do you think that this gives the local candidates, the local MPs, the tools to fight the election while the headline is about delivery and all those things that Frydenberg said?
It does, mate, although I query whether budgets actually in the end win or lose elections but for governments, but it does give some impetus to the government. And you know, I think Josh Frydenberg, within the parameters of the fact that in the Western world today, everyone is now relying on government for everything because of the handouts around the world during the pandemic. Everyone looks to the government to say, what am I getting? What's in it for me? Against that background, he satisfied a huge number of demands. I've got your points. I've got 11 points very quickly as to why this is a great Liberal budget. He concentrates on home ownership, which for those that remember Billy Snedden said in 74 was the great Australian dream. He concentrates on jobs, no new taxes, relief for those in need, assistance for small business, a proper, really powerful spending on defence. For the first time ever, not messing with people's superannuation, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Debt to GDP level halves by 2026. You mentioned before the Ponzi scheme of immigration. I've heard Peter Credlin talk about this in the past. And given that the Liberal Party is very pro-family, women's domestic violence package is really important, So you put all those things together against the background, Paul, that people expect the governments to do everything. And no criticism of Kieran, but you see Kieran saying to Josh a few minutes ago, what have you done about, foreign aid? Well, you can't do everything about everything in a budget. This is the problem, not a world. So, mate, against that background, I think Frydenberg's done an outstanding job for this budget in this year.